Hey everyone, welcome back to the Old Music Matters on That podcast. I'm your host, Brian. Today I welcome a special guest from up north in New York. We got Mike Trisain. How you doing today, brother?
Doing well, Brian. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Got hit with a little snowstorm today, so I had to drive a little carefully. And obviously, I think weather-wise, it kind of dampens the mood a little bit, as I'm sure you could probably attest to living up there in New York.
Absolutely. We're very familiar with the snow in the Northeast, without a doubt.
That's for sure. But I guess, how you been recently? What's up?
Everything's been well. We're just starting off with the new year, just like everybody else, and always looking forward to bigger and better things. See what happens.
That's for sure. And actually, I found you out on Facebook, and I think you had just released a new single recently. Can you tell the audience about it?
Yeah, absolutely. The single is being released this Friday. It'll be it's the first song of a 10-song album that I recorded throughout 2024, and it's in the whole album is based in metal and progressive metal, so it should be pretty decent for people. At least I hope so. I tried a little bit of a different energy on it. So we'll find out. We'll see what kind of reception it gets on Friday. We'll go from there.
All right, sounds good. Wish you best of luck on it there, mate. So, I guess which part of New York are you hailing from? Are you close to the main city?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm within inside of about an hour outside of Manhattan. I've been in the New York area for my whole life, and it's a tough city to get started in music. And it's a tough city in general, but it's a good spot to live. Used to be a lot more clubs. After the pandemic, a lot of things started to close down, but things seem to be coming back, which is always a welcomed experience. I mean, not only as a musician, I like going to see live music just like everybody else. So you want as many venues as you can to go check things out.
That's for sure. Actually, I think that'll tie in with COVID here in a little bit here too, but we'll hold off on that just a sec. So, first off, Mike, welcome to my podcast here, mate. And the way it's going to work is just going to ask you some questions right here. Let's get to know the man behind the music as well as who he is as an individual as well here too. So, you ready?
Absolutely.
All right, sounds good. So start back in the beginning when he was just a wee little lad. So I guess how did you pick up, doing the guitar, or I guess do you do everything in this little group of yours?
First instrument that I picked up on was the guitar. I started when I was about 9 years old, and never really put it down after that. And over the years, what I've done is that I've acquired playing in other instruments, so picked up bass, keyboards, drums, vocals, and just continued to expand my desire to learn more instruments, I guess is the best way to say it.
I guess, did you play any instruments like during school, like in middle or high school?
During school, I pretty much stayed with playing the guitar. I started forming bands when I was in middle school. A couple guys, we started forming bands out. Two of them were keyboard players, and they needed a guitar player, so we used to sit in. And that actually gave me my first taste of what it was like to be in a band, and dealing with the personalities of being in a band. And we also did it was one of the first demo tapes that I did. I was I was a kid at the time, but it was a good experience. It was a lot of fun.
Just getting his hands dirty, I guess. What sort of genres were you guys playing? Were you like just doing covers of classic rock?
No, actually, back then we actually wrote an original piece. That's pretty much been my entire career as a musician. I've dabbled in cover bands, but I never really enjoyed them as much as playing my own material. And that experience back then was the first taste that we all had in writing an original piece. I did the guitar work, obviously. Both of them were challenging themselves on the keyboards at the time because we were all really young guys and just learning and figuring it out.
All right, that's pretty cool. So I guess jumping in here to, your own project, named after yourself, Trisain. So I guess, is it just strictly you, or have you collaborated with some other people to kind of pitch in and help out?
The project has been predominantly me. I've worked with other players on it throughout. There was an album that we released that was prior to the pandemic. It was called Seven Songs of Sin. It's actually on my website, and it's also throughout Spotify and other streaming platforms that you can go to, and you can listen to it there. It was a good album, and then from there, obviously things have changed since the pandemic, but predominantly this has always been my project.
So I guess tell the audience, the history about how you got to that point. I guess were you playing in various other groups before then, whether it was cover or original?
That's prior. Well, what I had done for several years prior to that was I was writing and recording on my own. I was releasing music on my own. Then I decided to say, you know what, let me form this again, put it out on a stage. Got a couple players with me. I'd known the guys for a while, and figured that I was like, once we started doing some gigs, kind of see what would happen from there. And things were really starting to progress well, and unfortunately, we hit the brick wall of COVID, and that kind of just it really hampered everything from there.
Like so many things. So yeah,
absolutely.
I guess while we're on that topic here too, I guess how bad was COVID for you? I guess we could say mentally, and then family-wise, and then music-wise.
The experience as a whole was pretty rotten. I'll say that. For myself, what happened was just we had just finished this album. We were playing gigs. We had more gigs booked. We had a lot of interest that was happening, especially in Brooklyn. All right, which is a great spot. Right, it was a great spot for especially for the genre of music that we're in, hard rock, heavy metal. That's in that area. So we were lining up gigs. Everything was starting to gel. We hit the wall, and just like everybody else. And then from there, it was just pretty much we tried to maintain it as best as we could for a while, and it just didn't happen. A couple conflicts came up where one of the members he did not want to move forward with taking the shot for health reasons, and that hampered. I really didn't want to take the shot either, as most people did. Right, it was an experimental shot. Nobody really knew what was going to go on with it, and but we were trying to keep things moving forward, and it just didn't happen. There, he had too many health concerns that were about it, and totally respected that. But unfortunately, that's where that project kind of hit the wall at that point. And family, luckily, all my family made it through it. I unfortunately lost an amazing amount of friends. A lot of people died either from contracting COVID or suicides. They lost their jobs, overdoses. It was really, really bad. People that I hadn't heard from in years, you hear all of a sudden that they had passed away, and it was either a drug overdose, it was suicide, it was something like that. Because the impact from it wasn't so much as that the disease itself is, obviously it's horrible. I caught it. It was not a virus that I would ever tell anybody that you would want to get, especially when you lose your sense of smell. That is probably one of the most unusual things that you could possibly have happen to you. But what I think the main thing is that what a lot of people, at least in my opinion, is that they forgot how many people lost their livelihoods, and it drove them to either drugs, alcohol, and other things. And then they just decided that was it. They lost their will to live. So I have to say that the thing that kept me going was my music. It helped me persevere. I wrote a ton of music. As musicians, we get somewhat isolated in our own head a lot of times anyway. So somebody all of a sudden offering you a year off to just basically, I was still working and doing what I needed to do to survive, but to give me that much time to write and record and do all the other things that I needed to do was somewhat of a blessing. So it was a double-edged sword. There was a lot of really rotten things that came out of it, but there was actually some good stuff as well.
always seemed to be some sort of blessing in disguise whenever I'd done like other interviews with other musicians. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm real sorry for I guess all the losses that have occurred during COVID there too. So
appreciate that, man. Definitely.
right. And good to see you are doing well there, mate. It's good to see you and your family pull through. So
Yeah, I agree, man. That would have been even harder if had lost a family member. My family's not as big as it used to be, so it would have been very difficult.
I can imagine. So all right. So this one gets a little tight with COVID here too, but I guess what was the music scene like, I guess before and then even after COVID here too? Was it a little easier before COVID to try to maybe get into a venue and try to play your music?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There was more venues. There were significantly more venues that were available for people to play. Um, in the city alone, there was roughly about a half a dozen bars or clubs, if you will, that during the pandemic they closed down because financially they couldn't make it anymore. And the internet has changed the scene significantly. Um, it gives artists significantly more resources to be able to reach a further audience that they ordinarily wouldn't have been able to reach. But it also can form, in my opinion, again, maybe just complacency about people being able to want to go out and actually see a show. And some people are still very, very, very. You'll still see people walking around with masks. I think the psychological effects of what happened because of COVID, they don't want to go to places where there's a lot of people, and that fear, that overhang, that what if the next virus is actually even worse? If there ever is one in our lifetime, which I hope that there never is. I would never want to see any of us have to go through that again. But the scene prior was robust in comparison. There was significantly more clubs. People were having parties. It was a lot more movement. But since the pandemic, it's starting to recover in New York. It has not gotten back to the level that it was once.
I was going to say, because I know New York was also known for its heavy death metal sort of music that came out. I know there were a couple of bands out of Yonkers. I think Suffocation was out of Queens, and then there was the ones up north, close to Niagara and Buffalo, there with Cannibal Corpse and Malevolent Creation, those sorts of bands. Like I said, did you ever get influence from like those sorts of bands that came out?
For me, the influence was more in probably my influences came more from the 90s metal and 80s metal, more in those genres of music. Definitely more Queensryche, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, even bands like Kansas, Yes, Genesis with Peter Gabriel. Those more vintage classic bands. Rush was a huge influence at times on my writing. I've listened to a lot of different music. I listened to Opeth, Soen, Riverside. Pretty much, there's so many different genres. I'm massively into metal, though. I try to pull influence from everything, and I don't really like to stay too heavy into one particular genre. I'd rather listen to be more eclectic about it, and I consider it all heavy metal. For me, there's a lot of subgenres that have happened from that. It's like, when I first started listening to Metallica, everybody considered them to be a thrash band. Now people call them hard rock. So it's like, you don't really know. So I just call everything heavy metal.
6 1, half dozen another in that case. So yeah.
Exactly.
And I guess when I was checking out some of your music last night, it seemed like the song was a Strawberry versus Godzilla, and actually it was more of acoustic style, I guess. Did you just start off doing acoustic just to get your hands dirty, or what was
that album there? That was just something that I recorded 8 acoustic pieces and put them out. And I'm actually still releasing part of that album. Another one of the releases is coming up in February. And I did that more to show just diversity in style. Also, some of those songs, some of them I had kicked around for many years, and actually in a conversation with my father, he's like, "Well, why don't you release some of that acoustic stuff?" Because he knew that I was working on another album, and I'm like, "All right, I'll give it a shot." So I put that together and decided to release that. That tune in particular, that was written several years ago, and it was the title has thrown a few people, to say the least. So, thank you for listening to it. I appreciate that.
No worries. No, I thought it should have been Butterflies versus Godzilla, since you got Mothra, who's like this big winged butterfly who's always pretty and everything there too. So stuff like that. But maybe that'll be an idea down the road. But I'll leave it up to you. It was still great nonetheless. So
Thank you.
and I guess how would you describe like your genre of music? It seems like you're kind of doing like a little bit of that progressive sort of roots. Because I've always thought progressive tend to like change it up every now and again. But I guess how would you describe your genre?
Yeah, I would put me into progressive hard rock, heavy metal. That's definitely where it would be, at least in my opinion. All right. Like I was saying, I've always admired bands like, in particular, like Queensryche or Led Zeppelin, Kansas, Yes, Rush. Even the Beatles. Reason being is that they've showed a lot of dynamic in what they wrote. You could listen to the band, like if you listen to, using the Beatles as an example, they came out with a song like Helter Skelter, all right, and then you listen to Blackbird, and it's like this is the same band. One song that was covered later on by Motley Crue, and then they came out with this really light acoustic song. It's so the dynamic there is what again what I think keeps people interested in it. And for me as a writer, I'd rather just continue to write as many interesting things as that I can. So if I fall into something that people are like, well, that's not heavy metal, and I'm like, yeah, but what do you like the song? If you don't like it, then you won't like it whether it's heavy metal or not. You'll just, that's it. But if you like the song, you'll listen to it. If you listen to it, that's all. That's my only goal. Is to give people something to listen to. I don't mean to ramble on here, but one of the things that I've always found that is really cool is that when you're playing out in an audience and the people have never heard what you've done before. They have no idea that you have X amount of songs, that you're on this, you're on that, it doesn't matter. They've never heard you before. And then you start seeing somebody's head do this in the audience while you're sitting there on stage. And they're grooving to you, all right? And they're grooving to what you did. And that to me that's payment as a loan. I mean, I've played many gigs where I worked for free, and I'm not the only artist who's done that. But when you see that reaction from someone in the audience, it doesn't make a difference because you just move them with something that came out of your head. And that's, to me, is really, really cool. You just gave that person an emotion, and they tied themselves into that moment with you. And to me, that is probably one of the coolest things that you could possibly do.
I say like more serious whenever they're doing like this with the arms crossed, and they'll be like,
right. And they're just, yeah, I mean, it's really cool. I mean, it really is. Cause as a listener of music, it's like same thing. It's like when I was growing up, you listen to a song, you're like, well, how did that guy come up with that idea? Or, what moved them to get that to go? And then it's like, you get yourself hung up on it. Now you're stuck in the song, and you wake up and it's in your head, and that's a great thing. And it's like, and that's the kind of stuff that, in my opinion, that that you would want to be able to help people with. Give them a reason. If they like your song to wake up with in the morning, well, go ahead and listen to it. That's great.
Initiate the bobblehead effect. That's what we got to call it now.
Exactly.
I should say butterfly effect. Let's just call it the bobblehead effect. And make a movie about that instead with Russell Crowe in it. So, yeah. So I guess what's your plans? I guess for 2025 outside of the recent music. I guess are you trying to maybe get out on stage again? Are you going to recruit some people?
Absolutely. The main thing is right now is building building some momentum behind the new album. Seeing if it's basically see how it takes, I guess is the best way to say it, and want to put a couple players around me as well, and see what we can go out there and do. Playing out is fantastic. I mean, I was prospecting and doing some of the acoustic material in some local places, and probably down in the city. And then for the electric stuff, it would be getting some players around it and seeing where we can move forward. So definitely.
I guess out of the venues that are still operational, I guess can you list a couple that are kind of worth going to go see a show at?
If you were going to go into the city right now, well, let's see. Down there in Brooklyn, the Lucky 13 is a really cool place to go and catch a show. It's a wild venue. I was fortunate enough to play there right before the pandemic came in. And have you ever seen the movie Dusk Till Dawn with Tarantino?
I have not. I'm familiar with Tarantino's works, but I mean, I've kind of stopped that during Glorious Bastards. But go ahead.
Kind of gives you that feel when you walk in there. I mean, they have go-go dancers that are dancing in the place, and it's got this really unusual. It's a very dark bar, but it's a very cool spot. So I would say if someone was going to visit the city, look there. See, there's also another spot that's out in Jersey. It's called Dingbats. Dingbats is a good spot, especially if you're looking for again, hard rock and heavy metal. I mean, these places are geared for metal, hard rock, metal, those genres of music. Right, exactly. So if you're going to go, I would probably check one or two of those out. They're one's in Brooklyn, one's out in Jersey.
All right, sounds good. I knew a band that was called Incantation, which was part of the New York scene, but they were on the New Jersey side. So I was trying to remember how far Newark was from Manhattan and all those places that make up New York City. So I guess it would be pretty close. So yeah, all right.
Oh yeah, Newark from the city, you're maybe talking about without traffic. We'll qualify it that way. Maybe about 20 minutes with traffic, a couple days.
In which case, we'll see you next week. So
exactly.
Right.
There's another spot that's downtown too. It's called St. Vitus. That place, again, it's got a different feel to it there. But Brooklyn in New York still has a scene that actually still has a metal and more of a what we used to call hardcore scene. It's got that there. It's kind of died off in Manhattan. Manhattan has gone a lot more with there's a lot more R&B and a lot of clubs, going on in Manhattan. A lot of trance, that kind of stuff. So it's not as geared as it used to be for rock music, unfortunately, because there used to be a lot of really cool places to go down there.
I guess the same could be said for cover and tribute bands. I guess have you also seen a good number of those pop up in those pubs as well?
Not so. I mean, tribute bands. I've seen them more actually in that club I was mentioning earlier, Dingbats. I've seen them do. They've advertised several tribute bands. Actually, when my band played out there a couple of years ago, we were openers for a King Diamond tribute band at that time. Right. I mean, it was really cool. They did a great job. I mean, they had the stage presence, everything. They had They had props up there. I mean, it was something else. But that place is kind of known more for putting those types of acts up.
So was he doing like the corpse paint and even like the crosses all over the face and everything?
The whole thing, man. The whole thing. They even had like what was it, gravestone props up. They had everything on stage that you would kind of expect it if you were actually watching King Diamond. So they did a pretty good job.
Was that, did he manage to do the voice? He's got to do the voice in order to match the King Diamond.
He did, and that is, I mean, that is a very, as a singer, that is a very hard pitch to hit for 45 minutes. So I gave the guy a lot of credit because, when you're up there and whether you like the sound or not, you have to be impressed by a person's talent, and it takes a lot to do a tribute band. It takes, and you're doing it accurately. It takes a lot of effort to be able to do that.
So make sure I slip him a 20 next time. So hey, that's up to the guy there too. So good to say at least New York's rebuilding, to say the least here too. So all right.
Yeah.
So I guess moving on here to the next question, and I've noticed the two guitars behind you there too. So I guess are these your two babies that make the magic happen? I guess what else you got?
The one over my right shoulder, that's the child. Yeah. That's a Les Paul custom. That's the first. That is actually the first guitar that one of the first, actually was the first guitar that I bought on my own when I was a very young kid. And the shop that I bought it in was in a spot. There's a city in New York called White Plains, and there used to be a shop down there called Giuliani's. It closed down many years ago, and the guy had nothing but vintage custom guitars in it. And this happened to be one of the ones, and I saw it, and at the time I was a kid, and I said, "It's black. I want that one." So I bought it, and so she's been with me for a long time. This one over here, actually, that guitar is a guitar that I built with that I put together myself, and then the artwork on it was done by a close friend of mine, and he's an artist. So that is a home built guitar.
It's like a similar build to like the bass player. I know that's probably just a regular guitar, but there's a bass player in Suffocation. His name's Derek Boyer. It has like a similar build to that as well here too. He's up for like really hanging his bass down low, and he like turns it like this, and he can even like place it on the ground, for instance, there too. Still shreds like crazy. So
yeah, this is the body style on that is a coffin.
It's a coffin.
Yeah, it's a coffin style.
Well, in that case, I mean, it makes sense that you are in the metal. So I mean, it wouldn't be metal if we didn't have coffins involved, to say the least. So
that would be correct, man. That would be correct.
Absolutely. So I guess, so do you do the whole studio work, like putting the music together? Do you do it yourself, or do you do it in a studio?
Yep. All the music I write, record, and produce, and engineer. So everything is done by me. That's correct.
So I guess what sort of gear do you use for that to make the magic happen?
Right now I've been using Studio One, and and basically a ton of different plugins and other sorts of things to get things to sound the way you would want them to, and time, mainly ears. Your ears are right. Your ears are everything, and as I've evolved through my career, because the thing is that when I first started recording, everything was still done on. You had to go to a recording studio. Everything was done on very large systems. It was, the gold standard was 24 track recording, right? And There was, I mean, you literally had to walk into a room that was, I mean, it was a very large room. You had studio isolation, everything else like that. And now the way that things have changed is that whether it's, I'll let other people debate whether or not it's for the better or not. I just know that the accessibility of what you can do now in your own home is amazing. It literally is amazing. You know, before, it's funny, I was just having this conversation with somebody today, and, in a basic price for a studio, I mean, it would cost you just to come up with something decent, typically, probably about $1,000 a song, right? At least. So on a 10-song demo, you might be into it for about 10 grand, all right? If you went to, or let me call that an album, all right? If you went to a lesser studio, you might be able to get you'd probably be able to shop around and get a good price, but then you have to be concerned with your time, all right? And how much you're putting in, how much detail, how much you're actually able to color, and how much time you're actually able to spend on making sure that you're giving a good presentation to an audience. That's the hardest thing. You hope that you hit it no matter what, but now it gives you the way that technology has changed. It gives you a lot more flexibility.
That's for sure. I guess. So when did you start committing to like a home studio? Was it a little before COVID?
Oh yeah. I had done a lot of recording prior to COVID. COVID though, it got me, because getting away from, obviously we weren't able to do sessions anymore. We were able to practice. We weren't going out and playing gigs. So what it did is it changed my focus to, well, how can I improve the recordings that I make? What can I do to ramp those up? So again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, it's like some of what came out of that unfortunate time was a blessing, because it gave you opportunities to focus on things that, hey, I couldn't focus on that, dedicate that much time to figuring out how this particular recording software was going to work, or how these plugins would interact with this sound or this type of instrument or that instrument, or how my vocals would change. You weren't able to put that much time into it before, because you had other things to manage as an artist, as a band. But that definitely improved that ability.
That's for sure. All right, that's pretty cool. And I guess while we're still on that topic here too, about technology and all that stuff here too, I guess, have you used any AI recently? Artificial intelligence?
Yep, definitely.
I was gonna say, is that what you used for the little Illuminati logo that you did with your Trisain logo?
This one is just for this particular album.
I was gonna say, what sort of a program was it? I was actually curious too. Actually, I did. I always think it's funny too when you see like the eye and the whole triangle there, and people think like that's some Illuminati shit going on right there. So I guess what sort of program did you use to put that together?
This actually, I got a helping hand from Gemini on this one.
I remember. I think someone actually.
Gemini's Google's AI.
Oh, okay. That's what. Oh, yeah, that's what it was. Actually, I was thinking of what other artists actually used, but I think it was actually more of a platform that had like these little clips that you could use, and you could plug it in and make like a little music video out of it. So I wasn't sure if it was the same thing, but I just wanted to make sure I had my ducks in a row.
You know what it is that again, to me, it's art and experimentation. All right, and the technology is new. Don't be afraid of it. And sometimes, I mean, embrace it, but measure what you're going to do with it. I think that it should be let loose? No, not at all. I think that in the wrong hands, that technology could get very dangerous very, very quickly, because even the limited amount that I've used it's very impressive. I discounted it at first when it came out. Oh, it's not artificial intelligence. Get the hell out of here. What are you talking about? It's got no intelligence to it. Then use it. And you use it, and it's like, oh, this thing's actually doing something that you would expect a human to do, which is really odd. I never thought in a million years that it would have been like that. But yeah, so to answer your question, yes, I've used AI.
Have you just used it strictly for our work, or have you used it a couple times to help out in the music?
I've yes, no, I've used it for as I was saying to you earlier, the music industry has changed significantly. So the one thing that you have to try and develop an edge with is figuring out how are you going to market yourself? How are you going to hold yourself out to the public? What are things that you might be able to do to be able to increase your visibility? And it doesn't, at least I haven't been able to figure out like how to get it so it'll do it for me. And that's really not what my intent would be to do that. The thing's not a slave. It's what it is, you know? But to use it as a sounding board is pretty cool. So if you say to it, like, give me an example of how to do X, Y, and Z on YouTube to increase views, all right? And it'll literally populate an entire plan for you of what you should do. Now, normally, if you went to a marketing agency to have to obtain that, you'd probably spend a lot of money with some guy or woman or whoever, all right, for them to give you that amount of knowledge, and you basically pay a subscription fee to Google for it, and it just spit out an entire marketing plan for you.
So basically, it's like you said, a double-edged sword in a way, because actually some of the artwork I've done with like my little music project that I've been doing with some guy in Texas, I've actually asked for artwork from someone who was a graphic designer. Did an awesome job and everything there too. Unfortunately, because AI and all that other stuff starts taking over, unless they're using AI, they start jacking up the price because they're not getting as much inquiries and everything else. So you can see what's happening, even though I understand where, as we say, money is tight. So,
well, yeah, and that like you just said very well, it is a double-edged sword, because the internet, as what we were talking about earlier when you were asking about who's doing my recordings, right? Years ago, well, you had to pay an engineer. You had to have the right amount of mics. You had to have, I mean, especially, there was no such thing as an electronic kit. Everything was an acoustic kit. You didn't have drum simulators that could simulate an acoustic kit, you know? Even whether you didn't have any of that technology. Now, so what in essence is that you're doing is that, yes, you are eliminating someone else's job. Maybe, because it takes a lot of dedication to learn how to do all of that stuff. So if a person doesn't have the dedication, motivation, and time to be able to sit at a desk, record something into it, figure out how to color that sound enough, all right, in order to put it out and release it, well, their only alternative is still to go to a studio. So even if the technology is available to them, they don't either have the motivation, the time, or maybe just the talent or the tech, the technical ability to be able to do it. So they still will have to pay somebody. So it's a it can be like the internet, if you will, with what the internet did to the postal service. Because how many thousands and thousands of pieces of mail no longer get sent because of email, all right? So it's the same thing. It's an advanced technology. It's either, do I think that the internet has hurt society a lot? Yes, absolutely. I absolutely do. But do I think that it's improved society? Yes. So it's a 50-50.
a double-edged sword. We gotta make a song title out of that next. So
I'll get that. Get done tonight, definitely.
I just played a seed in his mind right there too. So all right. I guess speaking of which, I guess the songs that you have written, and even the ones you're planning to release soon, I guess, what are your lyrics normally like to delve into? Do you like doing real world experiences or maybe stories about this and that?
Combination. A lot of the stuff that I've written. Let's see. All right, the new album that I'll be releasing. The majority of the songs that were on that were from real world experiences, but I put them in. The lyrics are done in a way where I feel that the listener, all right, would still have to figure out what I meant. Okay, so they can interpret it the way that they want to interpret it, and I would prefer them to do that rather than actually know what I wrote the song about. Mainly because that's how you develop a connection with the song. I want somebody to make it feel like that they want, and I don't do that, and I don't mean it in an intentional way, but I want them to embrace something about the song that gives them a good feeling.
I'd say almost like keep them on their toes in a certain way. So
yeah, and you know, yes, into it. Yeah, I mean, the idea is that you know, because I mean, again, you listen to certain artists and you're listening to what they wrote in the song. You're like, well, what exactly did they mean by that? And then you think that like, oh, they meant that. And then all of a sudden you'll see that artist in an interview and they give you an entirely different meaning for the song, and it killed it. It's like, but I thought you meant this, and they're like, no, you know. So I'd rather give people the ability to be able to say, interpret the song for what you like. The main thing is that as long as you enjoy it, and you wouldn't listen to it if you didn't enjoy it.
that's true. But I would say it's almost like how Green Day's Good Riddance was, where people were playing that at the prom dates, and it was pretty much a song about a breakup. It went horribly wrong. So yeah,
Exactly.
still funny to this day.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit of irony thrown into it, right? Sure.
Well, then it's also saying people like Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. People think it's like, oh, it's a patriotic song, and like, no.
Yeah, and that's exactly. It's like I was talking with someone last week about this, and she happened to say to me, she's like, we were talking about the Hobbit, and I said to her, I was like, well, did you ever hear of a song called Ramble On? She's like, who? I'm like, by Led Zeppelin. She's my girlfriend, and basically we were talking, and bottom line is that she's from Colombia, so she had no idea who Led Zeppelin was.
So far, it didn't really expand into other territories. So yeah.
But the bottom line is that she didn't know who that was, and then I was like, "Oh, listen to this song. It's called Ramble On." And Ramble On is actually about part of the lyrics that are in the song are about the Hobbit and Tolkien and what he wrote in that because she's very much into the movies, so gives you an idea of interpretation of things. I guess is the best way to say it.
Out of the darkest depths of Mordor, I met a lady so fair. A golem, an evil one, slipped away with her. So that old deal.
Good. Very good.
Actually, I recently got back into Ozzy's Boneyard because my dad had changed their radio subscription. So unfortunately, I lost my heavy metal channel that I was listening to a good bit. So I fell back into Ozzy's Boneyard, which plays like all their classics, like you Ramble On for one, and The Ocean's another one. So, and among others, to say the least. So that's still good. It's all good. So moving on here to the next question, I guess, what would you say has been your biggest challenge as a musician? And I guess if you want to list any others, feel free to share.
Biggest challenge as a musician. I've been at this for a long time. I would probably say the biggest challenge for a musician, or for me, has been reliable personnel. Yeah, that's probably been the biggest challenge. Unfortunately, sometimes with, and I listen. We all have our own personality traits. I wouldn't say that I would say at times that I might not be the easiest person to deal with, working with me or for me, because when you have a musician, when you're a musician, you want certain things to sound a certain way, especially when you're the one who wrote it. All right, so you have a certain thing in your mind that's saying to yourself, "Well, I really need it to sound like this." So you're expecting that result. All right. Um, so I would never detract from myself being part of a band and how I would be perceived as maybe being able to manage things. All right. But with that being said, all right, some guys get to the idea that um, they're a rock star before they are. Okay. And to me, when you're doing this, it's no different than any other job that you could possibly take on. When you're sitting in your room and you're writing and you're a musician and you're playing, all right, and you're writing songs and you don't ever care as to whether or not anybody's ever going to listen to it or not, all right. Um, I wouldn't call that a hobby. I would call that's your passion. That's what you're looking to do. I don't believe music is a hobby for people, because if you can figure out how to put your hands on a guitar and make a note come out of it, you're a musician, right? Whether or not you're a professional, whether you're a beginner, whether you're intermediate, whether anything else that comes out of that from that, all right, you're a musician. All right. To me, it's not a hobby. It's something that you want to do with your life. It's a passion. Follow it. All right. But when you are looking to do this as a more than just sitting in your own room and oral room and maybe tinkering around and throwing out a few notes, all right, and you actually want people to listen to it, you have to give people a professional, polished product. I hate to use the word product, but it's the only way I can actually describe this, all right? You have to give them a sound that they want to hear. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is if you're a professional, all right? You have to be dedicated to your craft. And you also have to come in with the mindset that if you were going to go work for a Fortune 500 company, right, and they're going to pay you, a high six-figure income for the year, all right, do you think that they're going to allow you to show up drunk, high, disheveled? No. No, they're going to tell you, there's the door. Go ahead and use it, all right? A lot of times I think people romanticized what the music industry was about, because of a lot of times when you saw things like that came out from, in particular, the 70s, these guys were party animals and there was girls all over the place and all that other kind of stuff. And the videos that they used to show and everybody was having a good time and all this other kind of thing. And it's like, it's really not like that. It's your art. They just happen to promote that because that's what got people to go and buy their albums and people to pick up the guitar and everything else, because they thought it was going to get them the girls or the money and all this other kind of stuff. And that's a great marketing idea, but that's not the reality of it. The reality is that if you want people to listen to your music, you have to give them something good to listen to, and the only way that you can do that, you have to be serious about it. So personnel has definitely always been an issue. Trying to find the right people that will be sitting there who are dedicated, and more importantly, they've really got to like what sound that you put out.
I'll say that's definitely a good one there too. I know I brought up how bands sometimes have struggled with creative differences along those lines, but most of the time it was always like the marketing side of it, which kind of delves into like the social media and that sort of stuff nowadays. But also in terms of like maybe also scheduling and that sort of thing, because people work multiple jobs. I'm sure you do too. So I mean, like it's Seems like marketing and scheduling is like more of like one and two. So here's actually a new one. So actually, I applaud that.
Oh.
There we go. A little golf tap for you, but you're all right. So like I said, I think creative differences normally have been the Achilles heel that kind of like ends like a lot of bands, to say the least, too. Like I know you've probably seen like maybe Molly Crew to a certain extent. So
Yeah, I mean, Deep Purple had a really good way of figuring that out. They, not that it really helped the band stay solidified because they had multiple lineup changes throughout the years, but they agreed that all of them would get equal writing credit. That's how they got rid of that because all of them were very talented musicians. You know, sometimes when you're some people don't write. They will never write. They just don't. It's not in their creative. It doesn't mean that they're a bad musician. It just means that they don't write. So that's how it works. Other people can. It's whether or not they elect to do so. You know, but I think with these, they came up with it. Maybe I'll throw that out to you. Maybe throw it at some guys that maybe come back to you and say that it was creative differences. Well, tell them to give each other equally writing credit. That way you get rid of it. All right. Whether or not it'll solve the problem of an attitude, I don't know.
it's worth a shot. So
give it a shot. Exactly. Give it a shot.
I mean, afterwards, you got to figure out how to get rid of the ego part, which I think that was the problem with Richie Blackmore at the time.
Yeah, I think and Gilliam, they both. Even I heard a recent interview, and Gilliam even said that he could have done things differently. He could have done things differently, and it would have made things easier. But again, these guys are hugely talented writers, and they were very proficient in their craft. So it's kind of tough.
I mean, just the song "Burn." I mean, that thing literally burns, to say the least. So
sure.
Absolutely. And actually, it was a shame about John Lord because I don't know which interview it was. You saw Ian Gillian, and mine was actually with Loudwire. And I think he had told after John had passed, it was almost like he felt his spirit kind of come inside. So that's our thing too. It was some sort of spiritual sort of moment, for lack of a better term.
Sure. And with some of these, I mean, especially with some of these bands, I mean, these guys are. It's, a lot of time, I mean, the industry as a whole targets people who are young. A lot of times, the record industry, they will target younger artists, and they don't have a lot of life experience. So the problem with this is that they can get caught up in things that ordinarily they would have, if maybe they hadn't been signed at such a young age, they probably would have figured out as they went through life of things not to do. And for lack of experience, they get caught up in things that they may have never would have done, or they're the same version of them 20 years later would have said, why am I getting into a fight with that guy about an E chord? Just let him play the damn E chord. Just let him play E major. I mean, come on, it doesn't matter. Just try and get the song through, work it through. Work the solution, not the problem.
That's always how it's supposed to go. But and not to throw like a little pun, but like hindsight is sort of 2020. Whenever you get to later in your life, you're like, why do we fight over that whole thing of the E chord again? So I don't know, but good sort of advice right there too. Kind of tied with that question right there. So all right. So Mike, we reached for questions here pretty good. So here, let's jump to some fun ones. Ready?
Okay.
Let's start here with the first one here too. I'm actually curious if there's a specific New York dish we don't know about, but what would you say is currently your favorite food?
My favorite food. I have currently been on a bit of a sushi kick. So that's been my current favorite food. In particular, I believe I'm getting. I hope I don't roast the pronunciation of this name. It's called chicken katsu, which is basically it's a fried chicken cutlet, and it comes with a California roll and some dumplings and some white rice. It's very good.
Who wants Chinese tonight? So
It was Japanese, so it's a
Japanese, so it's a little different. That other Asian country. So yeah. I have to admit, sushi's actually really made a nice little move recently. Like in a lot of my interviews, there's been either the Italians, which normally ties in like pasta or pizza in some sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get sushi, which stands out on its own, to be honest with you, too. So we get a good amount of Asian.
Sure. Well, I was pretty much raised on Italian food, so anything that's Italian is always delicious. So I wanted to give you something a little bit different. You asked currently. Otherwise, we might have been talking about maybe scuttle and beans or something along those lines.
Nice little cheese tortellini sort of pasta dish that we've been putting throw together, to be honest. So, all right. But it's actually good to get something new. So, all right. Good choice. So for the next one right here, what would you say is currently your favorite movie? And if you have a favorite TV series you'd like to share, go ahead.
Let's see. Favorite movie? Well, most recently, I watched Dune, and I'm looking forward to the second. You know what I mean? Dune Part 2. I haven't watched it yet, but Dune I thought was pretty good. I in comparison to the original, it wasn't bad. It didn't have Sting in it though. All right, so you kind of got to give him a little bit there, but the Dune wasn't a bad one. And TV shows, watching on Tubi, there's a show called Lone Wolf and Cub. It's a Japanese samurai show that it came out in the early, I think it was around like 2000, 2001. And exactly. And that's pretty decent. So if you're looking for something entertaining, try that, but you got to keep in mind it's got subtitles, so you're going to be reading that one.
I will say Japanese know how to do some entertainment, I'll tell you that much. Actually, it was also a shout out to Iron Maiden's Senjutsu.
Yeah, good album, not bad.
I actually did see him live, and man, they kick some ass even in their old age. So
yeah, those guys still have it. Definitely. I saw them on the Book of Souls tour, and that was a good show.
Unfortunately, not Nico anymore, but I was glad I got him when I could. He was still playing in Pittsburgh, but I forget how many shows afterwards, but he announced his retirement. I guess he just couldn't do it anymore.
You just saw them on this recent leg of their tour.
Yeah, the Future Past tour, I guess, however they pronounce it. So it was something. I can't remember the full ones, but I know Future and Past were kind of used. So it was like, I know they did like 5 songs from like their Somewhere Caught in Time, and then they did 5 from their Senjutsu album. So then they mixed it like some of the other ones. I was really happy they did Fear the Dark, but I really wish they had opened with Aces High.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, well, Fear the Dark's that's a really good song. Definitely.
That's for sure. All right. But great choices there nonetheless. So I don't know if you drink, but if you do, what would you say is your favorite alcoholic drink? And what's your favorite non-alcoholic drink?
I don't drink alcohol, so I stopped that one several years ago. My favorite non-alcoholic drink, probably just a good old-fashioned cup of coffee.
The coffee, man. You just can't deny it when you need it in the morning right there, too. So, unfortunately, I've had bad experiences with coffee. I think it was before they started bringing out the coffee mugs, or it was like those Yeti cups that you later got. You're just able to pull the lid back and do it like that. Unfortunately, my mom just had a regular coffee mug, so unfortunately, you're spilling it in the car when you hit like bad bumps here and there. So, not good. Not good.
You got to get one of those travel mugs, man. They'll help you out a lot.
Well, that was way back in the day. She unfortunately upgraded, to say the least. So, unfortunately, traumatized me, so I never drank coffee afterwards. So I don't know how you people do it. So,
okay, got it. That's a good thing. Then don't if you don't feel it, don't stay away from it. That's the best thing to do.
I replace it with Mountain Dew every now and again. So, you need something to do. So I mean, hey,
Yeah,
whatever gets it rolling.
I usually stick with hot stuff, either coffee or tea. That's basically my poisons, if you will. I'll stick to the hot stuff. I don't know why. I just prefer drinks that are warmer, I guess.
I said it's good this time of the year, given the obvious. So maybe it helps.
Yeah, yeah, they do help out.
That's a good thing. All right, a great choice then, nonetheless. And for the last one here, here's how we're gonna do this. So, tell me what your favorite song is. If you want to list one from the mainstream world, and if you have one from the independent community, you can feel free to do that. Otherwise, if you have trouble just picking one song from each category, uh, just name a band or bands that you've been listening to a good bit recently.
Favorite song from a band that I've been listening to recently. Um, it's a band called Soen, and they have a song called Tabula Rasa, and it's a cool song. They are. I had La Poison Rouge is another spot that's down in the city. Good place to go see a show. All right. They are a band. They're from Europe, and they played down there. I went to go catch them with a good friend of mine over the summer, and great band. Check them out. The drummer of the band, he actually was the drummer in Opeth originally. So really strong band, solid sound, very solid sound. I enjoy listening to them a lot. They're good. So yeah, I would say that song probably sticks out of their repertoire. That and another, actually, really, I'll take that back. A really good song by the same band. It's called Gin. Very good tune. All right. So if you get a chance, take a listen.
How do you spell the band name? Is this like a Swedish sort of group?
It's Soen.
Actually, not too familiar with them. I know Opeth, and actually, I did see Opeth live. I would say the drummer that I saw at that time, he was pretty big. I'd say he definitely was able to. I don't say like something like an NFL lineman or something there too, but man, he looked pretty big to say the least. So
When did
yeah,
you? How long ago did you see them? A while ago.
I think it's now actually. I'm at 22 now that I think about it, because they were with Mastodon and a band called Chemist at the time.
Okay, Mastodon's a great band, definitely.
Oh yeah, totally kicks some major ass. They put on a show. Actually, I always had to laugh because there was one I actually videotaped. I think it was Crystal Skull. I think the name of the song was. It was actually the second song on that set list from Mastodon, and I saw like the bass player was just kind of like pointing like this whenever I guess the lead guitarist was doing a guitar solo. So I was like, he gives the guy credit. So hats off to them. But nonetheless, killer show.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Mike, we breezed through all the questions here. We are down to one more question on my podcast right here. But before we jump into it, would you like to ask me any questions or say any final words before we jump into it?
I mean, I guess how did you get started in doing all of this? In talking to people like me.
It started actually more so during COVID when I initially finally launched my YouTube channel after procrastinating on it for so long. But at that time, I was just doing drum covers. But I had been looking at the topic of podcasting because I was hearing like how big it was actually getting. Because you're seeing ones like Joe Rogan and like some of those other ones that were like making big money, that sort of deal there too. So I think like, what exactly is podcasting? And at first I thought it was just like talking about like certain things like this and that. But then I'm seeing like I said, Joe Rogan, like some of those other ones, they're and just having conversations with people. Like I could do that. So I eventually got into 2021. It was actually a friend of mine who, actually, funny enough, he actually had played during the halftime show when it was Penn State playing Notre Dame. I think it was the Orange Bowl, and he was actually a drummer for that country group right there too. And I was just looking at it afterwards. I was like, "You son of a bitch!" So, but he was actually my first interview that I had done, which I think come February, because that's when it actually started, February 2021. I'm going to actually celebrate that 4-year anniversary with it. So,
Cool. Very cool.
and it initially started off with drummers. I was just mainly looking at YouTubers who were just like doing like one instrument. Maybe some who were like part of groups like here and there, depending on like who it was. But then I actually stumbled upon the independent community on Facebook there. And then afterwards, after I kept finding more musicians, I stumbled upon more, and then the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate opportunities to speak with you. Um, who obviously you're a music lover, so that's always great. And I think that you, like me, probably from what I'm picking up here, is we both want to see the scene be robust, get people out there, people listening to music and having a good time. I mean, that seems to be the general idea here, and I think what you're doing here is absolutely fantastic, and I think it's awesome. I really appreciate that you invited me to do this with you. Definitely.
No worries, mate. Always wanted to help out as best I can. So, okay. Was there anything else?
No, man. I again, I really appreciate your time. This was great. It was nice just to speak to somebody, meet somebody new. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
No worries. But we do have one more question, and here's how it goes. All right. So, given what COVID has done, obviously, I know you talked about some of the losses that have happened along the ways, like friends you probably had not heard about for a good while there, too. Uh, so, sorry I had to really go through that, but I guess from your experience there, too, and I guess this can tie in here with this message of hope. What sort of message of hope would you give to people and musicians who perhaps went through something similar so they could try to move forward with their lives?
Don't give up. Don't give up. That's the best. Do not let it beat you. All right. For ironically enough, for me, going through COVID it was rotten, but it wasn't. This may sound odd, but it wasn't the hardest thing that I ever went through in my life. Not even in an earshot. All right. It was tough, but life could be a lot tougher. It's a virus. People unfortunately pass away. I think Albert Einstein said it the best, and I'm kind of paraphrasing what he did say, so I don't want to overquote the man. All right. People are unreliable. Goals aren't. If you set a goal for yourself, goal is what you'll hit. If you set a goal that, let's say, is aiming for the moon, all right, or better yet, let's say you set a goal and you're aiming for the stars, all right, your worst case scenario is you'll hit the moon, right? So I would just say to any musician, do not give up. And don't be discouraged if people don't like your music, because if you let enough people listen to it, all right, you will find an audience that will. I mean, that's it. It's like me and a couple of my friends, we used to love listening, and still do, listening to Rush, all right? My sister, if you put on a Rush album, especially the old stuff, she's like, I can't stand that guy's voice. And they were one of the largest bands that came. They are the band, the premier band that came out of Canada. So I would say just do what you need to do, and just do not give up. It's not just you can be a musician for your entire life. You can take it to the grave and have fun doing it, and just enjoy yourself. And whether or not you'll ever play the Garden, I don't know if I'll ever will, but that's not my intent. My intent is to have a good time and enjoy yourself. So don't give up. That would be my message of hope to anybody.
It would be nice, but unfortunately, we have to really work our way up to that point. So, okay. Right. But to quote Quentin Tarantino, because I know you mentioned him earlier, spoke like a true prodigy.
Well,
yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for sharing right there, too. So it's good to have you along here for the ride.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. So, Mike, we reached the end of the podcast right here. We talked a little bit about an hour and 10 minutes. But I guess before we close out of here, got any final words? Want to give any shots to anybody?
No, just well, if this does go out before Friday, I hope everybody goes to Spotify and listens to my latest song. It's called "Sick," and there's going to be about 9 more songs that are going to come off that after that release. So if you like that one, be on the lookout for the rest of them. Definitely.
All right, sounds good. So outside of Spotify, I guess, what are social media, and I'm not too sure if you differentiate with streaming platforms, but I guess Are you on all streaming platforms?
On all streaming platforms. I'm on Pandora, YouTube, Deezer, Amazon Music. Also on Apple, their streaming services. Let's see. My website, you can find me also at www.mtrisain.com, all right, which is another place that you can find me. And then this fantastic T-shirt that you pointed out before can also be found on that website too.
Actually, I was just looking at the logo because I got my little script over here. It still has your name as Pyramid in it too. I actually didn't know you were wearing the T-shirt.
I can give you a shot of this. I can give you a shot of the shirt.
All right, there we go.
They're available in all sizes, for all shapes and sizes.
All right, sounds good. So to close out like this, everyone, my guest today was Mike Trisain, hailing from up there in New York, right there. So he's part of his own little project right here called Trisain, and he's got some new material coming out pretty soon. And we'll be doing some shows maybe at some point, but we'll see what happens right here too. So he can definitely add to his New Year's resolution since we're only a couple weeks into January here. So, but nonetheless, go support this guy right here. Hit all streaming platforms, hit all the socials. Let's help our brother out there too. So, Mike, good luck this year, and be careful out there because you know it is a crazy world. Rock on. Stay tuned, y'all.
All right, man. Take care.